Good evening and welcome to this Understanding Grief seminar. We're so glad to have you with us this evening. We're glad and thankful that you have spent a bit of your precious time with us. That is one thing that we learn as we are grievers, that is really one of the best gifts that we can give to ourselves as well as to others, is that incredible gift of time. My name is Dr. Galen Gobin, and I'm your host at Journeys Through Grief. This is a place for a community of grievers. And we invite you here to join with other people who are grieving, find the comfort, the strength, the support that we really need, as well as offering your hard-earned wisdom, which is what grief gives to us. When you're there at one of our social media platforms, either at Instagram or our Facebook page, like us so that you can keep up with the community here and just become a part of this. I think that you will enjoy that and will be able to find a lot of really helpful material from people, as well as the other things that we post. Grief's a hard experience. Person death really shakes and rattles our world. It turns what it really was a normal routine that we had in life into a minefield of triggers and grief bursts and really unknown experiences. It's really a challenging time for us as we go through that, especially early on when the grief is raw. It becomes the availability of others around us who provide a deep source and resource for us for the strength that we need to maneuver through our own grief journey. Grief is made easier by those who validate our experience and who come to us without trying to fix us. However, there are a lot of people that's the way they understand grief, and so they come to us, and it oftentimes pushes us into the shadows. Makes it very difficult for us because they want to talk in what I call the mystery of life and death. And really, there's not a whole lot of words there. It's mostly just being present and being quiet and being with another one. Those that do talk to us so much about it can oftentimes cause us to build a wall around ourselves and to shut ourselves off. And so one of the things that we wanted to do here at Journeys Through Grief is to acknowledge today, which is International Grief Awareness Day, and to bring in one of my good friends and an expert in grief, and that is Paula Bunn. Paula is a licensed marriage and family therapist. That's what you may have seen behind somebody's name, the LMFT. That's what it means. It's a special licensing that she's done, a lot of work that she has put in. She's also a fellow in thanatology. Thanatology is the world of dying, death, and bereavement. And what that means as a fellow is that she's the cream of the crop. She's a part of that. I looked at her LinkedIn page, and it says there that she has a reputation as a skilled and compassionate grief professional, serving hospice families, responding to community tragedies, providing clinical supervision and educating professionals and lay people locally, nationally, and internationally on grief, loss, and other mental health topics. And that is an incredible resource that we have with us tonight. I'm so glad that she's going to share a bit of her wisdom and experience here with us. Paula, thank you so much for joining us here.
Oh, thank you, Galen. It truly is my pleasure to be here with you tonight. I have started out many years ago in music education. That was my first career. And from there moved into school counseling and eventually gravitated toward mental health, where I've been now for a while. As you said, I'm a therapist licensed in California and specializing in grief and loss for about the last 12 years or so. Started out in private practice and in a psychiatric hospital, worked there for a few years, and then discovered hospice work. And I have done that for almost 12 years now, have been at Unicare Hospice for the past 2 years, and never expected the field of grief support and loss to be as engaging and rewarding as it is. I absolutely love it, and best work I've ever done. I recently retired from my second job as an adjunct professor at Bethel Seminary, where I taught master's level graduate students in marital and family therapy. Personally, my faith and my family are very important to me. And my husband and I have 5 adult children, and so far 6 grandkids, and we live in rural San Diego County, where we love the quiet country life. So that gives you just a little bit about me. If you don't already know me, I'm pleased that you're here with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. What a rich history you have there. I've private practice and hospice, and I know the hospice is actually one for children, part of the time that you've done with that. And I mean, just an incredible rich set of experiences that you've had. I can imagine that you've heard a lot of things from people that they've heard from others who were trying to, as I said earlier, fix them and fix their grief, not suffering. They're in a better place and stuff. What are some of the things that you've heard that your clients and your families have said, that just didn't help?
Right. There are so many. It's hard to know kind of where to start. One of the first things we hear is, at least he lived a long life. Well, not long enough for me, right? If I'm the one that's lost him, or at least he went quickly and didn't suffer. But if somebody goes too quickly, that's painful too.
Right.
I always say, if it starts with at least, don't say it. He's in a better place. And that may be true, but timing is everything. The better place, especially as you said early in the process, the better place feels like right here next to me,
Right.
And then parents who've lost children, they hear some crazy things. Well-meaning people will say things like, you're young, you'll have more children. That doesn't feel helpful. Or thank goodness you have other children, as if that makes up for it somehow. And then a lot of people who have had losses hear things from their friends or family who are concerned, like, shouldn't you be over this by now? I mean, it's been fill in the blank. It might have been 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever. And that person who's listening is ready for you to stop being sad,
Right.
Or then I guess one more I would add, and that's just, I know how you feel. And that's usually followed by that person's own story of loss. They don't know how you feel. They're not you. Even if they've had a loss very similar to yours, your feelings are yours alone. And again, especially early in the process, you're not in a place to focus on their loss. It's your loss that is consuming you. So those things are just not very helpful to hear. But it's not just things people say. There are a lot of misinformed attitudes out there in our culture that are also unhelpful and sometimes downright hurtful. We live in a very death-denying culture.
Yes, we do.
We don't want to think about it, talk about it, look at it, prepare for it, or learn how to support somebody going through it. And especially here in Southern California, right, where it's against the rules to be anything other than eternally young, beautiful, and healthy, right? People just don't, you're not allowed to grow old here. And it's not just our culture. It's really, it's the human condition. It's part of being human. We don't want to face our mortality. But that avoidance, that natural tendency we have that makes us so uncomfortable with others' loss, means we don't always respond in real helpful, healthy ways.
Yeah. I've heard people, tell some really crazy, difficult stories about people turning around in grocery stores, looking the other way, good friends that will, contact them and say, well, I know this is hard for you and everything. So when you're done, let me know, kind of thing. Just to total abandonment to when those are the kinds of people that normally you would look to find the strength and support that you need.
It's so true. I have a friend who recently had a loss, and the very family member she thought would be most present is the least present.
Yes.
And so sometimes there are, some really hurtful surprises like that folks you thought would be there aren't, and those who maybe you didn't even think of show up and provide amazing support. Yeah.
Yeah, and those people that you expect, that becomes another grief. It's another loss within the midst of all of this that is really hard. And I've tried to share with folks that one of the best things I think they can do with that is to not judge that person. They, for whatever reason, they don't have the capacity to come and be with you, and that's not a fault or anything. That it's a problem, but you do so much better to be able to take the energy that you would expend out on them for being mad at them and using that for your own self and having to grieve that loss as well.
Right. That can be so painful.
Yeah.
I think the best, as you say, it's if you can, to try to look beyond the actual words and see the motive. They're trying to care, though they may be clueless about it.
Yeah, which is, in some ways is not necessarily their fault or anybody else's, because we've done a really poor job in the world of doing grief and teaching about grief. That's one of the things that I love so much about this day, Grief Awareness Day here today. It's a chance that we can lift our heads, if you will, and say, this is hard and this is difficult. It's something everybody goes through, and you need to learn something about it. You out there that don't, think that you're gonna have that, and do you have a suggestion for people how they can sort of take charge of their own grief and not let others, what I say is determine what they should and shouldn't do? That comes across oftentimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's taking charge is easier when we understand a couple of very important truths about grief. First of all, one is, and folks, if you're listening in, this is probably the most important thing I would want you to hear tonight, that grief is not an illness that needs to be cured. It is not a problem that needs to be solved. It's a normal, natural response to loss.
Yep.
And once we truly grasp that and internalize that, it completely changes how we approach our own grief and how we respond to others' misguided but probably sincere efforts to fix us or help us get over it.
Sure.
So that's one thing I think is important to remember. And then the other is just that we each process or cope with our losses in individual, unique ways. We draw on our own emotional and spiritual strength or courage to find our way and insist when needed that others let us do that. We won't always know the exact next step in our journey, but we figure it out as we go. There's no clear step-by-step map for grief. It can get kind of messy.
Yeah.
But we and the people around us learn to allow that process to happen, that messy process at times. And as for how we respond to those hurtful comments, again, personally, I try to look beyond the actual words, the unhelpful or insensitive remark, and try to consider the motive behind it. It's usually a good one. Yeah. So I might say something as simple as, thank you for caring and wanting to help, but this is my loss and I'll get through it my way.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. That's really brilliant. That is, doesn't put a judgment on them or anything, and really is a way of taking charge of your own grief. That is really important. A couple of things that you said, I just want to lift up to make sure that people hear that, is the normalization you talked about with this, because we don't know and we don't, experience this, in a kind of a mindful way very often. And I've heard so many people say, I just, what is wrong with me? I just don't get it, and after I've talked through them and helped them to understand that incredible breadth of experience that grief brings to us, throughout our body and our mind and spirit and everything. It's sort of like, wow. And I said, you're doing great work there. It's just really hard to do. And so that normalization is really important. And the other word that you use, which I love, is insist. That's really hard for us. I think there's some among us that it's not so much, but for most of us, to insist on something like that, we always want to make everybody else feel, kind of better or more comfortable around us, when really we're the ones that need that. We need that open space that other people can bring to us as a gift.
Right. And sometimes people that I've worked with who are grieving, they may be, middle-aged or beyond, and yet this is the first time in their life some of them have learned to take charge of their life. This experience has opened that door for them to now learn what it means to take care of themselves and to be assertive, to make sure that their needs are being met and that they are allowed to find their way.
Yeah, it's part of if you want to look at it this way, part of the gift of grief is that it does unsettle the world and give us an opportunity now to make some changes in some things that we may not really want to hang on to with our own self and all, and that's a part of that, internalizing that and learning to live out of a new space, and not easy.
No,
boy,
no,
it's a good gift if you can look at it that way. And all. So I wanted to ask you also, I've heard you use the word before, which I think is really, really wonderful. And that is talking about externalizing our grief. You already used the word internalization. How can we internalize, for our own self? And somebody said to me one time about I had to learn to give myself permission to grieve, and my family liked that. So, that's an internalization, but there's also this other part of that too. I wonder if you could talk about that for a minute.
Sure. The ancient Greeks used to say, if you could name something, you had power over it. And I think there's some real wisdom there. As long as something's in our head and just rolling around and gaining steam, I say, like a snowball coming down the side of a mountain, it just gets bigger and bigger and scarier and scarier. But as soon as we get it out on the table and we say, there, that's it, that's what I'm thinking, that's what I'm feeling, it starts to lose some of that power. And so it's taking what's on the inside or internal and getting it out on the outside, externalizing. And that's one of the important keys to this process. And there are many, many ways to externalize. For some people, it's just talking with a supportive friend or a family member.
Sure.
Or maybe participating in a support group. For others, they get that out by writing. A dear friend of mine just lost her son last year, and she writes beautiful poetry to him and about her grief process. So that's an example of externalizing. Writing letters. I do quite a bit of asking my clients to write letters to their deceased loved one. Gives them a chance to express their heart now, but also to work through some things maybe they didn't get to fully work through with that person. And other types of more traditional types of journaling. Art is a way of externalizing. Music, even dance or physical exercise works that emotional energy out. So there's a lot of different ways to externalize, which kind of also reminds me a little bit about the need to compartmentalize. I used to think that compartmentalizing was a bad thing. But it's actually a necessary coping skill. We can't live consumed in the loss 24/7. So we have to box it up and put it on the shelf and go live our lives. We have jobs to go to and families to take care of and relationships to tend and so on. The problem is if we leave it on the shelf indefinitely, it will eventually demand our attention in some not great ways. It's going to show up physically or emotionally or mentally or spiritually or relationally or vocationally or some way. It will show up and demand our attention. So we find ways of regularly, proactively taking the shelf off the box off the shelf and opening it up. For example, one dad I worked with I supported him when he lost a baby, he and his wife lost a baby. He would go to Starbucks once a week and get his coffee and go off into the corner and open his laptop and pull his hat way down where folks couldn't see his face. And for an hour, just look at pictures of the baby. And then after an hour, pull himself together and pack up his laptop and head off back to work and back to his life until next week. That's a perfect example of someone who found a way to compartmentalize because he had to, but then to proactively open the box back up again and let that out, let it, find ways of getting that out.
Yeah, that is so important. And I can't imagine somebody, I mean, I can imagine somebody hearing that and going, oh, that would just make me feel terrible, but again, that's everybody's different journey.
Yeah.
That everybody does their own stuff that just kind of naturally grows and flows up out of their heart to do that.
Exactly. I had another man I worked with who was a runner, and for him, his running time was his time to take the box off the shelf. And he used to kind of laugh and say, hey, nobody can see me crying when I'm out there running. So it was his time to think and to run and get that energy out.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I want to shift a little bit here and everything to really bring in something I think is really important. You've worked with a lot of families and a lot of parents through a death of a child or something else, but so often there are children involved in a death that occurs that, it's a grandma, a grandpa, a parent, maybe it's a friend down the street or whatever. What can you tell us about how children grieve and how we can be supportive of children and become aware that they're grieving as well?
Right. Well, so a few basics quickly about children. First of all, just realizing that children do grieve. Many people think they don't, especially the very small, very young children, but they absolutely do. They just grieve or process things differently than adults do. So we need to try to understand their experience. And if a child isn't talking about their loss the way you and I do, we don't want to assume that they're not affected by it. So let's assume, first of all, that they are grieving when someone close to them has died. The second thing is the younger the child, the more they live in the moment. We start out that way, all of us, and we grow up and lose that wonderful ability to live in the moment. So we have to learn mindfulness. But but for children, it comes naturally, and because they live in the moment, they may be weeping in agony 1 minute, and 15 minutes later they're outside playing with their friends, and as if nothing's wrong. It's not that they're no longer grieving, but they are just living in the moment.
Right.
So when they're sad, they're actively mourning. When it's time to play, they're fully present to that activity.
Right.
So that too, I think, helps us understand their world a little better and their experience. It's also important to remember how children think and how they understand or use language. The younger the child, the more concretely they think. And so developmentally, over the years, they gradually learn to think abstractly, and death is pretty concrete. It has a concrete objective side to it. And depending on one's belief system, there are many abstract, deep, philosophical, spiritual aspects to it as well. So the younger the child, the more simple and concrete that language to them around this death needs to be. That is, we don't use many of the euphemisms we might otherwise be using with adults when we normally speak about death. We don't say that grandpa passed away, or that he went away, or that he's gone on, because that doesn't mean anything to a small child who's not able to abstractly think about this.
Right.
So we are honest, and we say that grandpa died. We use the word died. Or that grandpa's body got so sick that the doctors couldn't fix him and his body stopped working. Because children can understand things that stop working. They've been
Sure.
around toys that no longer work, or animals, pets that die, and so on. So depending on the child's age, we might have to tell them that a few times, because the permanence of death is also lost on them conceptually. And then it's important to realize that children often act out their feelings because they don't have the language to articulate them. So they may act it out in play, in make-believe, in artwork, and so on. So we find ways, they find ways of doing their own kind of externalizing. I saw this in dramatic ways at the kids' grief camp that I used to work at, where we would set up various opportunities throughout the weekend for these kids to have experiences like that. One of my favorites was one that I facilitated for a few years in a row, which was the plate breaking activity. And so kids would write on the plate with a marker the parts or the aspects of grief they wanted to just get rid of and never see again. And then we gave them an opportunity, goggles on, of course, safety goggles, but to smash that plate against the boulders. And for them, it was a very good, they loved that experience. It was a powerful one that gave them a visible, tangible way of externalizing.
Yeah, I was lucky to do that at a grief camp one time myself, and it felt really good. You write all those things on there, and you just haul back, and we were throwing them against the wall and everything, and just to watch that shatter, and then to watch somebody later to clean that up, even carried that that ritual, if you will, out even further, that it wasn't overpowering. Those do break and go away, and we can clean that up and move beyond that. It was very, very powerful. Yeah.
Well, there are, I think, some things too that parents can do to kind of help the process along for their child. Most importantly is to just love them, just give them lots of affection and reassurance, and letting them know that they're loved and they're safe. But also to remember that for children, the familiar structure, the routines that they're used to are important for those to continue for the child's sense of security and order. So to the extent possible, we want to try to stay pretty close to the normal routine, even though a loss has occurred, rather than disrupting their life by just throwing everything out. Consistency in times like this is important for a kid at a time that can feel very chaotic to them. And then, it's fine to include them in memorial services or funerals, but it's important also to prepare them for what they will see and what they will hear, to be honest and clear and concrete about that. It's usually a good idea in those situations to have another adult, maybe a close family member, kind of designated to be responsible for maybe taking the child out of the ceremony if they need a break, or if they need to work off some energy. And finally, it's okay for a child to see you cry. It sends a message that feelings, even painful ones, are normal and okay, and it's healthy to express our feelings. So parents and grandparents and family members have the opportunity to model healthy expression and coping for their children.
Yeah, that is so important to really just learn to take care of yourself, and that it's okay to be what's going on inside of you as well in front of your children.
Yes.
We so often want to protect them, but that really doesn't help in the long run.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we were talking beforehand about a couple of books and things, and both, it was interesting because both of us pulled this one out, you know, that we had there. You know, what a fabulous book this one is for kids, and as we said, even really of all ages. It's something you can take and sit down with your children and to read through that and to talk about it. It's just a really wonderful way of talking about the whole gamut of what grief is and the way we experience it, and learn something ourselves oftentimes as well.
I talk about tear soup. It's kind of like some of those movies, like Pixar is really good at this, where they will make a movie that has a content that kids really love and appreciate and enjoy, but it also has a whole other level that the kids don't get, but the adults do. And tear soup is kind of that way. There's something for everybody in there.
Yeah. And I know one other wonderful book, again, that you and I talked about is this one, The Invisible String, which really helps kids do that work and do some of that externalizing as well as the internalizing of the connectedness that they still have with their person who has died. That becomes a real hard thing for particularly children who are still such concrete thinkers, as you were talking about.
Yes. Another one in a similar vein to The Invisible String is The Kissing Hand. Really lovely little story of not specific necessarily to death, but certainly specific to separation. And so the Kissing Hand is a great little book as well. I love this the Sesame Street kit. You can see that very well, but when families grieve, and Katie Couric and Elmo did a wonderful DVD and booklet to go with it. That's, I believe, still available on Amazon. You can check that out.
Yeah. You also can download it from the Sesame Street site. And it's I don't know about Amazon, but it's last time I checked was a free resource at the Sesame Street site.
Good.
And really, it really is a wonderful resource for talking about things, and it's got stuff for really the whole family. If you've got preteens or even young teens, to be able to sit down together and to watch that, because we all have our own journeys, we all have our own pathways that we walk through this, and even in our families, that everybody does things just a little bit different because we know that person differently, and we're all different persons.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's true. Well, there's plenty of other resources we could talk about, but I think we're just about out of time.
Yeah, we are. I did want to wrap this up and just say thank you so much, Paula, for joining us. 35 minutes have just like flown by here, and your words of wisdom, your comfort, your sense of authenticity really comes across, and I really do understand how so many people have come to respect you and to seek out for comfort and guidance and strength. So thank you so very much for being with us this evening, Paula. And for those of you that have joined us, I hope that you have been informed and comforted by this presentation. There's a lot here and probably far too much to be able to take in, but that's all right. It will be available in just a little bit later on Journeys Through Grief Facebook page, and then soon we will get that up on our YouTube page, so you can go back and watch that and mine this. Really, there's a lot of beautiful ore here that Paula has brought to us. So make sure that you check back. If this again is your first time, then remember to like us, and that way you will not miss out on anything that we're doing here. We are so grateful that each and every one of you have joined us here this evening. Again, my thanks to Paula. And now this evening, as we close, sending you peace as you grieve your loss. Thank you and good evening.
Good night.